Right, let's see what rubbish they put on this Christmas. Don't look now, Carruthers. I think we're surrounded. Ted, come on, we've got 10 minutes before it's Mexican night at the Hawaiian Ballroom. Oh, Heidi hi. Ho ho ho! And welcome to Tweed's Garage Christmas Spectacular! Hello and welcome to Tweed's Garage, where I present to you 12 tools of Christmas. So in this video it's a little sort of just a Christmas time thing. If you're watching it in June it's going to be really weird, but to all my little viewers out there, wishing you and your families a happy Christmas or whatever festive celebrations you have this time of year. This is just a little video I sort of thought I'd put together of 12 tools that I use or find invaluable around the workshop. So let's have the little countdown. One is one of these, which I didn't know existed till a while ago. They're just a pair of mole grips, slightly adapted, and they're for a clamping vise for pillar drills. And they just mount on the drill press through a hole on the table, like so, and you can move it around if you've got slots. Just looking at my other drills, yeah, my other drills are the same. They've got slots to move stuff around, so you can get them as close to the job that you're drilling as possible. And then, like mole grips, you just adjust them at the end for their tension, and then just clamp the job down, like so. And it's sort of better because we all get lazy with drill presses. We're always trying to hold something, which you should never do, and we all know it, but we all do it. Or the other thing is you put it in a vise like this, but then you need to clamp the vise as well, and you don't clamp the vise, and that's even worse because then you get the piece of metal flying around with the vise attached to it. 2. Next tool, the vise. This is my third vise. I think the other two are under the bench somewhere. I think one I bought originally, a small one, and that was a record. I think they're all records, and then the next one luckily I was given smaller than this, and then I was given this monster. This is record 36. I'll bring you over to look at it in a minute. Yeah, and this is smashing. This is a really nice vise, quick release. Let's bring you over. So this is it. It's a record 36. Very sturdy vise, and yeah, you notice the difference. I've got it bolts down in three places as well, so it's rock solid. The work I've done to it, it needed a repaint. Gave it a repaint. Needed a new set of jaws because one was original, one had been replaced with a gash piece of steel, and it wasn't clamping very well. It's got fast release on it, so it's a bit like the carpenter's vices, so you can move it out and then move it back in rather than have to wind it out and wind it back in. And I had some bar stock that made a nice set of jaws, so I just drilled them, popped them in the lathe and turned a taper countersink in them because they're a funny angle, funny size screw. There you go. These now, and I ordered what I thought was 4 of these from eBay because the photo showed 4. It was late at night, didn't read it properly, paid, was it £5 something for this plus £4 or something postage, and then waited, and then the envelope turned up and it had 1 screw in it. Absolutely furious, and then read the advert again and it was like 4-1 screw, but why put a picture of 4 screws and the vise uses 4 screws on the bloody advert? So I wasn't going to spend any more money like that, so I turned up 4 screws and yeah, turned the thread up myself because it's I think it's a cycle thread. It's a funny thread on these. Yeah, so turned the thread up and turned the screws up. Copied this one for the angle of the, I think it's about 15 degrees for the countersink, and put the jaws in the 4-jaw chuck and bored out the countersink with the tool post set over at the correct angle. Yeah, and they fit in really nice. They're not hardened, so they're only soft jaws really, but the clamping power of a large vise is worth its weight in gold in the workshop. 3. Next tool, breaker bar. Didn't have one for years and years and years, and then finally bought one, and I've never regretted the day getting one. So handy, especially wheel nuts when the tyre centres have racked them up with a ratchet gun, which they should never do. Yeah, sort of wheel bearings, you know, big tight nuts. So much better than using they all use these impact drivers now, which are okay, they get the job done, but sometimes you just need that bit of feel when you're undoing something to know whether it's, you know, whether it's going to shear or whether it's undoing, and sometimes just whacking it with an impact, you just don't know. But yeah, it's got me out a load of situations. There's sometimes you know, you sort of struggle for space to get it in there, but with the head articulated you can get it into most situations. So yeah, breaker bar. 4. Next one, peroxide bottles. Or they're called applicator bottles. You can probably get them at eBay, something like that. I get these from the local hairdresser suppliers local to us, and they're really good. This one's got cutting oil in it, so I use it on the drill press, on the mill, on the lathe, and it gives you a nice controlled application of cutting fluid. And then this one's full of hydraulic fluid at the moment. I used it for filling up a trolley jack, but also on a Piaggio Appy. I used it for filling the gearbox up because it's nearly impossible to fill up. It's got a tiny little hole up the top. These do the trick perfectly. So yeah, peroxide bottles. 5. Next tool, not a tool as such, but radio. Little bit of a story behind this one, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same thing. This radio, Gatto Blaster Hitachi, I bought when I was 16, started my apprenticeship, and my nan left me a bit of money, and it was my sort of hi-fi system, because I also bought a little turntable that would plug into the back of it, so I played my records on it and tapes and everything. And then I used it as I had it as a car stereo. I had a Mini with sort of negative earth. You couldn't get radios for it, you know, they were difficult to find decent ones that played reasonable sounding music on. So this used to sit on the back seat. It was stolen. It spent 6 months in sort of evidence, so I couldn't get hold of it. Then I got it back, and then I used the speakers, because the speakers are detachable. I used the speakers as sort of parcel shelf speakers in my Mark III Cortina, and then finally it all got put back together again, and it spent the rest of its life as a workshop radio. I mean, you know, radio's great. It keeps you company, stops you losing your mind when you sort of got a troublesome job, and also it it saves marriages a little bit, because you do keep a tab of time, you know, because you get the news reports coming up, so you've got a rough idea what the time is, because we're all guilty of disappearing down our little sheds and completely forgetting what time it is and facing the wrath of the good lady or good man when we get back down to the house. So yeah, radio. 6. Sorry, what? Oh, for me. What could it be? An empty box? An empty box? Next one, heater. Especially in the UK, especially this time of year, unless you're watching it in June and then it's quite warm, you don't need a heater. But I bought the blow heater after I mist-fueled the transit, and I had to fill it right up with diesel. And then when I got home, I ended up with 3 jerry cans worth of contaminated diesel, which I didn't know what to do with. So I think I bought this on eBay. I think it was sort of fairly cheap for about 70 quid, and I've been using it for 3 years now, maybe 4, yeah, because we had lockdown and everything. So it's, yeah, so about 4 years, and brilliant. Finally used all the contaminated diesel up, so now I just buy heating fuel. If you live out in the sticks in the UK, you probably find the odd petrol station that sells heating fuel at the pump, or kerosene they call it as well. And yeah, it's just handy to have when it's really cold and you're down the workshop, because you get too cold, it affects your brain locks up, and you just sit there sort of standing there staring at things and not getting anything done, and the only thing you end up getting done is sort of catching hypothermia. So yeah, heater. 7. Next tool is a Dremel. I'm on my second one. First one sort of packed up for some reason. Originally I didn't have one for years. I bought one for a tiling job, and then this one I bought as a replacement. Bought it in a set. I don't know if you can see up top there. Yes, you can. Up there, come as a set in that, and it always hangs up here above the vise with its flexi drive. And the flexi drive, yeah, makes them really adaptable. I always found when you're trying to use it with just the bits in the end, you know, this gets in the way and you struggle to, you know, get it into certain places. But with the flexi drive on, yeah, it's a lot more adaptable, you know. And if you've used them, you know what bits you can get. You get polishing bits, cutting bits. The little sandpaper discs are really good. But yeah, sort of really handy for cleaning up tiny little things that need cleaning. And like I say, it just hangs up there like a sort of dentist apparatus above the vise and gets used all the time. 8. So next tool, a set of Whitworth sockets. You can pick them up occasionally at the auto jumbles and that, new ones. You can get older ones if you're very lucky, sort of brittle ones and that, if you're really lucky. But the modern ones tend to be made in India, and they're really thick-walled sockets, and you know, you can't get them into tight spaces. Whereas these are beautiful. They're really, really thin-walled, and do the job really well. Yeah, highly recommend them. They're made by a company called Koken of Japan. Hashtag not sponsored. Don't know how I found them. I just sort of stumbled across them on the internet, and yeah, like all good socket sets, I've misplaced one. It will turn up eventually. If you ever want to teach a youngster a valuable lesson in life, buy them a socket set and throw away the 10 and the 13mm socket, and they'll learn about life very quickly then. 9. Next tool, most workshops probably got them. Angle grinder. This is my second one. I had a Clark one for years. That packed up eventually, and then since then I've had this DeWalt, which is sort of indestructible. It goes on and on, and you know, I use this for work. It's used for tile cutting, concrete, all sorts of things. And then in the workshop, you know, it gets used for cleaning off paint, cutting steel, and finishing and cleaning stuff up. And they are, yeah, they're really, really good, really, really adaptable. And over the years they sort of changed a bit. You could get the wire wheels and your grinding discs, but then since then, you know, these ultra thin cutting discs have come along, and yeah, they go through steel really nicely. But you also get sort of emery paper discs for cleaning up, you know, your normal grinding discs. And then you get the like Scotch-Brite pads and discs as well. So yeah, always close to hand, the angle grinder, to the fact that I bought a battery one as well, which they're really useful. I mean, you know, the battery doesn't last too long on them, but sometimes when you're out or on site and you haven't got power, yeah, they're really, really good. And the other thing about the battery one is they're slightly slower RPM. They're not quite as got not quite as much grunt behind them as the 240 volt ones. So in some situations they're a little bit more delicate. So definitely an angle grinder. 10. Next tool, digital calipers, and not just any ones. I've got a pair of Mitutoyo ones that I use all the time. Your digital ones are really great. I know some of the old boys say, yeah, I can read the other ones, you know, they're perfectly all right. But if you're sort of in the dark or with poor lighting, they are difficult to read, and the older you get, the harder they are to read. I mean, you know, you can read that, that's so clear. And you have the advantage of being able to switch from metric to imperial. And the other thing, that lovely thing you can do is you can zero it, so you can measure something. Say you're turning something on the lathe, measure something, zero it, and then when you're turning on the lathe, you can just keep measuring down to 0, and you know when you've got there. And they can do, if you don't know, not telling you to suck eggs, but those that don't know, they'll measure. You can measure outside diameter, you can measure inside diameter, and then they also come with a stick at the bottom for measuring depth, like that. But also on the back, if you look, there's a shoulder difference between there and there. So the back of them you can use to measure the depth of a shoulder, like that. There you go. That was a new one on me. Yeah, so highly recommend. You can get cheaper ones, and if that's all you can afford, great. But if you can sort of save your money up and stretch to a pair of these, you'll save money in batteries. You know, by the time you've spent out on a cheap pair of calipers, rather than buying the Mitutoyo ones. Batteries last on the Mitutoyos for a good couple of years, and especially if you put good quality ones in there. The cheap £12 calipers, they're okay, but they eat batteries in a couple of months, and it's always when you go and pick it up to come and use it, the battery will be flat, and you'll have to put another battery in. And I've had 2 or 3 pairs of them, and yeah, once I've got the Mitutoyos, I never used them again. So, and that is used every day in the workshop, so I'd say that's probably the #1 tool in the workshop. 11. Digital readout, invaluable tool. Yes, you can do without them, but once you've got one, yeah, you don't know how you've done without it. I'm very fortunate I've got one on the mill and one on the lathe. Just getting to grips with one on the lathe. But on the mill, so handy. I originally fitted one, my smaller mill, I bought one of the Chinese ones, which done the job perfectly well. And then that's moved on, and the Bridgeport came with an anilam on it, which is very accurate. Got very high quality scales on it. And it just, if you're thinking about it, you think, well, I don't know where I need to get one, because it will save you. If you're sort of working during the day and doing your hobbies at night or at the weekend, you don't have a lot of time, digital readouts save you so much time marking out jobs. You know, if you get some wobblers in there to set your work up, you find out where your edges are, and you can either sort of zero on one corner, so that's your reference point, or you can find the center of the piece of material you're working on. You can find the middle of, you know, a rod, so you can drill down the middle of it with your digital readouts. And then once you've zeroed it, you can work all your measurements from that point. And it just makes life so much easier. You don't need to mark it out, don't need to centre punch it. You can just run a centre drill through your points before you start, and off you go. And yes, I'll take you over quickly to sort of just see them, but because this is just a brief video, just sort of saying what is handy in the workshop. Digital readouts, really handy. So this is the anilam on my Bridgeport, 2-axis, and very, very accurate. And you can either have it in sort of metric or imperial, and you can move it along to keep track of where you're going, or you can zero a point and start from there, or you can find the center of two positions, or drill holes in a circle. It does loads of sort of stuff for you, but that's, you know, that's another video altogether. But yeah, of my sort of top 12, yeah, they're in there near the top. And this is the one on the lathe, so it sort of measures your travel in and out on your cross slide and on your saddle. And finally, 12. Last but not least, lathe. Yeah, I've had a lathe in the workshop for about 20 plus years now, and yeah, it gets used all the time. If you've seen some of my other videos, I started off with a Chinese one, had that 20 years, and then I bought the Boxford, had that about 6 months because the Colchester student happened to come along, so I moved the Boxford on. And why do you need a lathe? Well, you can turn up shafts, washers, bushes, you know, that's just round things, and you can you put holes in square things and hexagonal things and all sorts. It's just sort of, and if you sort of really push, you can do with a vertical vise, you can do milling on the lathe as well. So if you were sort of thinking about lathe or a mill, always the lathe first. So yeah, we'll have a quick look at that. So this is the beast, this is the lathe. You know, they're all pretty much do the same thing. Doesn't matter what size they are, small or little, but you know, in the workshop they are invaluable. Just for being able to make parts yourself rather than have to rely on other people, it's invaluable, and I wouldn't be without one. So I think sort of number one on the list of Christmas tools is a lathe. Oh, there you go, a rather random 12 tools of Christmas. Just sort of 12 tools that I use around the workshop and sort of find indispensable and don't know how I'd do without. Yeah, so sort of take from it what you will. Most useful tools, I think definitely the lathe is right up there, but the digital calipers are sort of probably top of the list actually, but don't use them for marking out, because the engineering gods will come down and smite you. Yes, and on that serious note, I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas if you're watching this at Christmas. If you're watching this in June, happy summer holidays. And yeah, so we'll catch up soon. See you later. Ted. Shut up. Bloody dog. Right. Ted.
Billy, come here.
Ted. Come on, we got 10 minutes before it's Mexican night. Stop that one there, start. Ready? Yeah, it's alright. Ted!
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry...
I see tigers.